You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today, but before we do, huge shout out to our sponsors. The Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma. And it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. A huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my two pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my two golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Citizens Banks, where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC. And hopefully our pups will run into each other. Turn your dream home into a reality with Home Creations, a family-owned and operated builder with over 40 years of trusted experience right here in Oklahoma. Call Holly at 405-364-9999 to schedule a showing or visit our website for more details. Home Creations, building homes, shaping futures, strengthening communities. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode down at Day Club today in Oklahoma City. Day Club's a modern workspace. I've recorded here a few times now. I recorded with Clay Steves and I recorded with Kevin Moore. So, been here, familiar with this place, but my guest knows this place really well because he owns it, and this is the home of one of his many businesses. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest today, Mr. Bryan Clifton, who is just an entrepreneur through and through.
Well, it's great to be here, Mike. Looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you for having me. A lovely office. Love the logo. Always love the Buffalo logo, especially when it's jumping.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people just have them standing, but you've got yours jumping. So.
Well, and I wanted it to be more than just a buffalo. I wanted it to be a white buffalo. Because white buffaloes are exceedingly rare, which is what a strong entrepreneur tends to be.
Yeah.
They're a rarity to find, and they're noteworthy. People remember it whenever they see it.
They definitely do. I've never seen one.
Yeah.
But I want to. I know that there is a hybrid one up in Pawhuska area.
Yeah.
Because I got a friend who's been up to take photos of it, but it's not a true one. But
well, a fun fact. So I grew up in a small town in West Texas called Snyder, and in Snyder, Texas, we had multiple white buffalo statues around town. So one by our courthouse, one by our big coliseum.
Yeah.
And so I grew up assuming that white buffaloes were much more prevalent than what they actually were.
Yeah.
Because we had physical statues that we had pictures climbing on as kids and all sorts of things. And then as I kind of dug into the history and the pieces a little bit more, I realized that's substantially more rare than what I thought, especially as a child.
Okay, I know Snyder because one of my best friends went to college, JUCO there.
Yeah, Western Texas College.
Yeah, I've driven through there a couple of times.
Yeah. It's a great place to be from.
Yeah.
I always say that West Texas, if there wasn't oil in the ground, nobody would live there.
Nobody.
We would always joke you could watch your dog run away for 3 days. So it's just, I love the people, love the values, but if there was not oil in the ground, it would not be a booming hot spot in any way.
That is very true. So growing up in Snyder, Texas, at a young age, what are the things in your childhood that you look back on that shape you today into the entrepreneur that you are?
So what I've discovered is whatever you grew up around is what you think is normal. So if you grew up in a household with 2 working parents, you assume everybody else grows up in a household with 2 working parents. And I grew up in a very odd household. So my dad, whenever I was a very young child, was building trailers in Texas that he would sell in California. Then he started doing toy importing. We had like crawling army men, and we were selling those at a lot of mall kiosks and trade shows and things along those lines. And that evolved into a import-export business with toy and novelty items, and I would regularly run cash registers at junior league shows around Christmas times or in the holidays, and as that continued to progress, I would handle our importing and all of our purchase orders from China and Southeast Asia, and we'd be in Vegas for trade shows every few weeks, Orlando, Chicago, other spots, and I legitimately thought that was a normal childhood. And I thought everybody would come home from 5th grade and get in touch with the trucking company that was supposed to have a 53-foot container delivered. They were delayed because of this. And so now my basketball practice has got to get pushed a little bit because of that. And I legitimately thought that was a normal childhood. Mm-hmm. And then as you grow up, you realize I was weird. And it wasn't probably until I got to college, because I would have conversations with friends in college who did not know me from that stage, and they would always say, this was not a normal childhood. And the most odd thing was what we were selling. So if you've ever seen the fake teeth that make you look like a hillbilly, Bubba Teeth, that was my family's company. Okay. So we sold fake teeth, and we sold all sorts of toy and novelty related items. So bullet hole stickers that would go on cars, or remote control fart machines, or just gag gift items that back in the 90s and 2000s would be in like a Spencer Gifts, or a lot of our distribution was through convenience stores. So we were selling toys, but I was not really a kid that played with toys, because what I learned, especially in like a mall kiosk situation around Christmas, I could demo a toy for a kid, that was fine. If my dad did it, it was creepy. Yeah. And so just knowing the nuances and differences of how I could add value to the situation, and the number of hours that I spent in malls and restocking items and things like that gave me a much different lesson and appreciation of entrepreneurship than what I could have ever learned in a textbook or any type of coursework. And so that was my normal childhood.
You had the greatest upbringing for an entrepreneur.
It was fantastic, because I got to experiment, but I didn't know I was experimenting.
Right.
And so I can't tell you the number of times that I flew on a plane by myself before I was aware that you need to notify the airline if you were under 15 flying alone. And so I always looked a little bit older. So I'd be 12, 13 years old, and I would be flying to another city, and I didn't know you were supposed to notify an airline, and I felt comfortable. And most of this was pre-9/11, so security situations were different. And so that was a fairly normal childhood for me. And again, until you get told something different, you assume, well, everybody else has a childhood like this, because all of my friends knew, well, that's what Bryan's family does. And I realized much later that was very odd. And there's probably a lot of therapy and trauma to unpack from all the layers of that, but it was a unique childhood, to say the least.
Well, and sure, yeah, you, like you said, you're a weird kid, and that under the circumstances, like, you're not just like going home playing video games or playing Tetris or running around. Sonic was a huge game that I loved in the 90s. Yep. I'm 34.
Yeah,
so
I'm 36.
Yeah, so we kind of grew up playing the same sort of games and actually running around playing outside, riding bikes and stuff. But you look back now as a 36-year-old, and there's so many of those things that are ingrained in you, lessons that you learned that you have to be super grateful for. Right?
I'm extremely grateful, and just the number of times that I was allowed to be able to take chances and take risks. So a regular occurrence is we would be at a trade show in Las Vegas, and we would be setting up, and I would be 13, 14, 15 years old, and I would notice some of our competitors a few rows over. So these would be at massive convention halls, and I would go up and start asking questions. And I'm just an annoying 13-year-old kid, and they're just trying to get rid of me. But I'm curious of, well, this is an interesting product. Where do you buy this? And I'm jotting down information. And so I'm taking reconnaissance lessons from my competitors who just think I'm a random annoying kid that's around here. And so I learned very early that I could take some of those risks. And what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is they say, hey, beat it, scram, this is not just you're annoying me. But I took a lot of those risks, and I didn't know what the what a gift that was, until I kind of look back on it years later and realize I dealt with rejection. I dealt with curiosities. I dealt with a lot of those things at a very early age, and I just had a lot of room to explore that.
Yeah, you don't know what failing is when you're a kid, right? Because you're just like, oh, it's just a normal day. I'm just going to go do this and ask people and run around, and like it's, you haven't got that worry in your head. I think that people get to the older, it seems like when you get to a certain age, you worry what people think about you, and then the older you get, the less you care about it. But you didn't have to go through any of that phase because you're just running around doing your family business.
I mean, every person has to go through some of that, but I don't think I went through it in the same way that I hear other people. And so my tolerance for risk is much higher than the general population, probably because I've had so many reps at it. I've been in those scenarios for so long. And so I'm 36, but I've had 20, 25 years worth of business experience, firing people from a very early age because my dad wasn't there or other things weren't in place, being able to take those risks, seeing the highs and lows with cash flow, with bankruptcies from customers. Like, I just got a lot of those experiences at a very young age, which helped give me different perspectives, especially as I progressed into other businesses.
As you're going through, this family business that you like I said, it's normal to you. It is your normal. You're dealing with logistics. You're running around. You got your hands in every part of a business. Did you gravitate towards any specific side of the business that you really enjoyed, that you look back on now that makes sense?
So I was always very good at structure, organization, finances. So I created our first accounting system whenever I was in 5th, 6th, 7th grade for our family's company. And again, I didn't know that was odd. You didn't have really good QuickBooks tools or other things. So it's just, what's our accounting system? How are we functioning along those lines? I handled most of our procurement, most of our PO orders, whenever we were directly buying from importers in the U.S. in the early stage of the business. And then as that progressed to actually manufacturing and handling all that in Southeast Asia, I just thought that was a normal childhood. And so I handled a lot of those things. My dad was always very good on the creative, new product creation. Other people in the company were much better at those areas. I was much better at do we need to have 24 of this product or 48? And how is that going to sit on the shelf? What does that look like? Because most of our distribution over time became convenience stores. So we were selling a lot of items in convenience stores on end racks. So this was before. Most convenience stores today are much more food, beverage focused. 15, 20 years ago, you had a lot more Wolf t-shirts, novelty gifts, other things along those lines. And that was really the market that we sold to quite a bit. And so knowing, how do you present that in a way that's going to make it easier for that convenience store owner to be able to display that product? Because I wanted point of sale right there next to the cash register. People are still coming in using cash. People have to walk in to be able to pay for gas. A lot of those things. It was just a different time that we just have forgotten what those stores and experiences were like that really allowed that type of a business to function well. Yeah,
some of that stuff's hard to find in person now, right? Everyone just goes to Amazon and Googles it, and there it is, right? And it's there tomorrow on the doorstep, or even sometimes in the same day. But you're right. Back in the day, you'd go and you just see it on an end cap. You think, I'm going to buy this, set of glasses with a big nose and a mustache on it, like all the gag gifts that we have, but now you've got to search for them. And as you, like I said, the accounting side of you that you draw to, but understanding where and the market and all of these things, and not to mention people are still buying with cash too. You mentioned import, export, the family was kind of in, and then you dive into your dad. You said your dad was doing product creation. Tell me about that side and how fun that was to really change and be like, we're gonna make our own now, because that's a big step.
It is. The product creation didn't happen overnight. We started with Bubba Teeth. That's where everything started, and then we started making spin-offs that were basically just repackaging. So we'd have Hillbilly Teeth or Beach Bum Teeth or Biker Teeth. That was the same product with a different label on it.
So you'd sell it in different locations.
So we would sell the Beach Bum Teeth on California coast. We'd sell the Biker Teeth at Sturgis, and in the heavy Harley markets, we would sell Hillbilly Teeth more in Tennessee, Kentucky, other spots, and we had a lot of different varieties along those. Some of them had the exact same teeth, just with a different name. But then as we progressed into more and more custom products, some of which, whenever you're working with Chinese factories or Asian factories, sometimes you could have a truly proprietary product. Other times it's proprietary-ish until somebody else copies that. The intellectual property rights and things, especially at that time, were really not worth defending on a lot of fronts. And so some of the early products were shocking pens, shocking lighters, all sorts of things that kind of our unofficial tagline became, if it's in good taste, we don't carry it. And so a lot of gag gifts that were really based on kind of teenage humor, so farts and poop and all sorts of things just along those lines. One of my favorite products, just most memorable, was an item called Uncle Harry's soap. And so this was a bar of soap that was intended to be in your guest bedroom that would have just a few extra items in it, like toenail clippings or pieces of hair or things like that. It just made it look like it had been used, and it was disgusting. And the number of times that I would see my mom, or especially women in my family, just roll their eyes and say, I don't want to be associated with this. I lost count. And looking back on it, that was a good reaction. That's what normal people would have done.
That's what the product was meant to do.
We would have all sorts of items, and so it was not uncommon for me to come home and see a test of items that my dad was working on, some of which we were doing mock-ups in our garage, in our warehouse. Other times it's, well, I was at this trade show and I saw this product, and if we modify it a little bit, here's the unique angle. So one of them was a like a Nerf shooter. So like a thing you'd put your finger in, you'd pull it back. Well, the obvious way that we took it was, well, let's make that a turd, instead of being just a regular foam shooter, so you make it a turd. And then they added corn into that in the next iteration. And again, this is the childhood that I was around. And so these are the examples from the adults that I was spending a lot of time with. So this was not a normal place for childhood development to occur. But again, that's what was normal for me. And so imagine sending over purchase orders and you're trying to figure out how many poop shooters do you need to order, and be able to work with customs officials trying to explain some of the items that are coming in. These were all types of things that were not abnormal conversations for us to deal with within the business.
I mean, amazing, right? What a unique way to grow up, but also from a business perspective, the lessons you've learned are I'm sure there's a time you'll put a price on it, but right now you can't, because it's so, it's such a scale that I don't know anyone else who's had a childhood like that.
I don't either, and there's probably a good reason for it. But it was such a unique way, because once I got to college, I went to Harding University in Arkansas for undergrad, and I had I love it. And one of the things that I really liked, especially coming from West Texas, was they had these things called trees. The trees were really, really helpful.
Searcy?
Searcy, Arkansas. And so I had a class my senior year, and it was each class period we had to turn in a new 3-page paper analyzing our childhood through a different mental model or mental assessment. And it was the most impactful class that I ever had, because it helped me realize a few things about myself, and it was kind of a form of direct therapy without being therapy. But what it made me realize is I always had to act older than I was. So even as a kid, I was never allowed to be a 13-year-old. I was always a 30-year-old in a 13-year-old's body. And so throughout my entire life, it's always been much easier for me to work with people that are 20, 30 years older, because that's what I had to do in that state, especially growing up. And so whenever you start unpacking, that was both a gift to be able to talk to older people, but it also made it a little harder for me to interact with people my own age or in different spots. And so as I progressed in my career, one of the reasons why I started the Council of Entrepreneurs was because I started looking up and realizing in about 20 or 30 years, most of my friends are going to be dead. Because all of my friends were 65, 70 years old, which I love their relationships now, but I'm going to be very socially isolated and lonely if I don't find a way to be able to develop those relationships. And what I found is I connect best with people that are dealing with complex risk situations, which is entrepreneurship, and really dealing with the emotional weight and the emotional challenges that comes. And the industry is irrelevant. There's all sorts of different industries that people can try entrepreneurship, but the emotional journey and understanding what are the highs and lows and how do I navigate that, that's where that skill set has really transitioned for me.
I'm sure people listening, and I'm kind of curious too, like you have this, this incredible childhood growing up in a business and learning as a business, learning all the things, the ins and outs, like dealing with, everything. Why did you go to school?
I went to school because my mom was an educator, my grandma was an educator, my aunt was an educator, and I thought that's what you were supposed to do.
Okay.
And so that was the narrative that was told to me as a kid, is if you want to be successful, go to college. And if you don't go to college, well, then something was a little bit off. And so I went to college, got degrees in accounting and finance, which I am very glad that I did.
Yes.
Because accounting is the language of business. And if I did not have that understanding and background, I don't think I would be able to do some of the things that I do today.
I wish I had gone into accounting or finance.
It was a great experience, but also at Harding, where I went, they had a tremendous focus on international programs. So I did 3 months in Athens and spent a lot of time with people from different nationalities that were on campus. We had a large population from Central and South America that were part of the Walton Scholars Program from Walmart. And so I really was able to form a lot of great relationships, and that pushed me into comfort zones that were beyond my comfort zone in a number of areas, especially whenever it came to international travel and just understanding cultural differences and relationships.
Where does the love of psychology come into your world, and how does that kind of integrate into not only just being a business owner and a product, but just you personally as well, and dealing with, entrepreneurs and that obviously you mentioned your family are educators, so you have that gene of wanting to teach and give back, and you also have this entrepreneur side too. So psychology is so complex, but when you dive into it, things start making sense, and you start aligning and joining the dots on why this person likes this, or why they buy this, or where on the shelf. There's so many things, but what's that first kind of reason that you're just like, or first thing that pops up, you're like, oh, this is like, maybe you didn't know it was psychology at the time, but you really dove into it?
I've always enjoyed puzzles from a very early age.
Okay.
And psychology is really just a form of understanding human puzzles. And so after I left Harding, I moved to Southeast Asia for a bit, and then moved to Guatemala. I was in Haiti. 2010, I spent a lot of time in a lot of different places. I ended up settling in Oklahoma City in October of 2010. And after I was here for a little bit, I started my master's at Pepperdine within the function that they call organization development, which I wish would be relabeled as business psychology, because it's really just understanding how people function within organizations. It's a lot on change management and pieces along those lines. So my curiosity around psychology, I took that to the next level academically, to try to be able to understand. I see these things naturally, but I can't articulate why I have this insight or why this curiosity kind of piques my interest. And so the psychology element, I just want to understand what makes people tick and how they operate. And so that was a natural progression for that. And I think I'm just an insanely curious person. I want to be able to see things. I want to be able to notice things. My wife has put a limit on me on the number of museums I can go to per day on trips, because I would spend all day just in museums exploring things. I have a high level of curiosity, and psychology and how people interact, that's really one of the most complex spots. But I can't explore psychology without also understanding history and what allowed somebody to have a certain viewpoint, perspective, bias, all those pieces. So my curiosity goes pretty deep into history as well, to be able to understand, how did we get to this point? Because no one's starting from a blank slate.
Yeah, and history repeats itself, and there's patterns, and you just need to dive into it, right? And also, is the history that we know really the history that happened? There's a lot of people that think that, or research that, like, I saw something the other day. It says there's 800 years of missing history that was just wiped out.
There's so much stuff, and history is typically written down by whoever the victor was. And so there's different versions of history. Growing up in the United States in a public health or a public education system, I did not see a whole lot of history in different parts, even of the U.S. So I did a deep dive a few years ago around like early 1900s, because all we did in school is we would skip from Civil War, maybe into World War I, and then it was the end of the semester. And so we had these gaps that you just had to be able to focus on. And so I've dug into different parts, especially as I've traveled. I've been to close to 70 countries, spent a lot of time in different places. And I want to understand, what is the history for you as you would describe it? I know a version that I may have been told, but I want to understand what's impactful for you, and how does that kind of change the way that you think, the way that you operate, or what you value within your own society.
Yeah. Why do you choose to kind of travel after college and go to Southeast Asia and Guatemala and just hit the road?
So I was in Haiti first, and that was in 2010. The earthquake happened in January, February. And so I was there for about a month working in aid distribution. I had been to Haiti 5 or 6 times before. So whenever I was 12, my dad took me to Haiti. And my first trip out of the country was to Haiti. And he said at the time, here's the U.S., here's Haiti. Not everywhere's like the U.S., not everywhere's like Haiti. Go explore the difference. And that single kind of trip piece probably did more for my curiosity than almost anything else, because it was such a shock to my system. And it wasn't meant to be this one's better, this one's worse. Just they are different. Why? Go explore that. And so I had spent a lot of time in Haiti. So whenever that earthquake happened, I had different connections, different resources to be able to assist in that way. Once I was there, I connected with somebody who said, well, you really should go to Guatemala if you want to be able to learn Spanish a little bit better. So I spent 2 to 3 months in Antigua, Guatemala, in an immersion Spanish environment. Spent a decent amount of time in the Philippines, in Hong Kong, in other spots. My dad at that time was already living in the Philippines, and so spent some time there. Then once I moved to Oklahoma, my first job was with a company called Give a Goat. And we literally gave goats. Okay. So if I look back at my history, fake teeth and goats are 2 pieces that most other people also have on their bio.
Sure, everybody, yeah.
But I was operating an organization in Oklahoma City, but most of our operations were in the Philippines. So I was in the Philippines regularly, spending a lot of time in that environment. And so just the curiosity and the pieces were always part of it.
70 countries you visited, any of them stand out that you would like drop of a hat and move to tomorrow?
Oh yeah, but for very different reasons. There's different things I've got a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a wife now, and the places that were very intriguing to me as a 23-year-old single guy is different. Yeah. So I went to Cuba whenever I was 22 or 23 before you could kind of legally enter that. We had to fly through Cancun. There's no legal stamp in my passport from Cuba because you had to get an extra paper there. Cuba was fascinating to me. It's not a place I'm probably going to take my family. We spent a lot of time in different parts of England. Whenever we got married, my wife had been to one other country. And so a lot of the places that we've traveled the last few years has been us being able to explore things together, which is a different experience. And now we're looking at being able to explore things with our kids. One of our goals in our family is we want to live 3, 4, 5 weeks, 2 or 3 times a year in different parts of the world to be able to help show our kids what it's like to be in different spots, some of which will be very kind of easy culturally. So the first places we would be going would be England or Italy, to where you might have a language difference in Italy, but the food's still relatively similar. Or in England, just how do we move around with public transit and not have a car-centric, like just some of those pieces that are different. And then I would progress to a little bit more degrees of risk, but not whenever I've got a 3-year-old and we're trying to deal with bathroom stops and all that. Whenever they're 14 and 12, that'll be a different type of challenge that we can explore then.
How'd you meet your wife?
We met while I was at Harding. She went to school just down the road at University of Central Arkansas, about an hour away. Mm-hmm. And my best friend was dating a girl that she grew up with. And so they introduced us. Yeah. And then the fun thing was we actually never dated while we lived in Arkansas together. So I was already living in Oklahoma City before we started dating. Mm-hmm. So the entire time we dated, were engaged, and the first 6 weeks we were married, we lived in different states.
Oh, wow.
So we did not live in the same state as boyfriend, girlfriend, or as husband and wife until we'd been married for almost 2 months. Yeah. Which I would not recommend to people, but it is possible. It makes your communication really good. Mm-hmm. Whenever you have to deal with long distance elements and being able to navigate. I may only see you in person 3, 4, 5 days a month.
Yeah.
So it just changes how you get to know each other and what that.
Yeah. So why Oklahoma City? Of all the places you go to, how do you land in Oklahoma City in 2010?
Goats, honestly.
It was literally the goat.
It was literally the goats. It was a very intriguing opportunity to me. And I came into Oklahoma City at the perfect time. Yeah. I moved here whenever the Devon Tower was 6, 7 stories out of the ground. Yeah. I don't know if I could have picked a better time to step into kind of the Oklahoma City Renaissance. Mm-hmm. And as I've been here now for almost 15 years, this is home. I'm from Texas. My wife's from Arkansas. We have no direct ties to Oklahoma City, but this is a city that is so interesting to me. And one of the things that I've been curious, I'm trying to find the data to support this, is it feels like Oklahoma City is missing a generation. And specifically what I mean is Gen X business owners. So if you and I were in Oklahoma City in the late 80s, whenever the oil bust was happening, and we were entrepreneurial and we wanted to turn things into reality, we probably would have left because the opportunities didn't really exist. The economic headwinds, the challenges were really strong. People left to Houston, Dallas, Kansas City, Chicago, other places, and they never really came back. And so what occurred is it created an extra opportunity for millennial business owners to not have that next generation of competition. And so that's part of what I feel like has helped to fuel a lot of the growth over the last 10, 15 years in Oklahoma City. So if you go and look at almost every industry in Oklahoma City, you can find baby boomer business owners or millennial business owners. You don't find nearly as many Gen X.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is millennials have had a longer runway, but it's also going to mean once the baby boomer business owners are retiring or selling, there's not that next generation with 30 years of experience. And so I want to make sure we don't repeat past mistakes or other things because we don't have that kind of potential wisdom in the room, especially in certain industries where that's a very valuable tool.
Yeah, and you know, we're already seeing it, right? You know, people are selling off their businesses, and people our age are now buying service-based companies and companies that will always be around or generally aren't going to be affected by technology and AI.
Yeah.
It's fun to see, right? And they're adding their new spin to it, redoing the website, adding social media.
It's so fun. So whenever I was at Pepperdine, my thesis was specifically on family business transitions. Initial business that I started here in Oklahoma City is called Myriad Inside, and I work with family business and closely held business transitions. So I don't sell insurance. I don't have a financial advising side. It's purely an advisory piece where I work with a lot of families and people that are going through a really scary time of how do I transition? What does this look like? And the opportunities that exist, not just within Oklahoma, but nationally with business transfer, just continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And for most people that are in the transition stage, they're afraid. Yeah. They don't know how to do this, especially for men who draw a lot of their identity from their title. Who am I whenever I'm not president of XYZ company anymore? How do I handle this? I want to pass this down to my daughter, but she doesn't want it. Do I try to force her to take it? Is that good? What does that do? And so I deal with those really complex emotional pieces. One, because I've lived it. Yeah. I've lived it. I've worked with a countless number of families and businesses on that. I've studied it academically, and what I see is a transition event for a family business is either going to bring them closer together or it will push them farther apart. It will not stay the same. Yeah. Either of those directions might not happen instantaneously, but it kind of sets this chain reaction and process, and most people don't know how to transition well because they've just never done it before. Think about the first time you bought a house or you sold a car. You don't know what you don't know. And so how do I navigate that? And this has a whole nother layer of emotional identity. And it's scary. It's scary for a lot of people. And so I work with people that are trying to buy those businesses. I work with employee bases that are trying to take over from an existing founder, but keep the leadership team in place, and all the kind of varieties and pieces that can happen within that.
Yeah, the emotional family business is not easy, right?
No, it's not. And most of the time, people have regrets that they sometimes try to start making up with in a transition event. So I might not have been the dad that I wanted to be, but maybe if I have the money, I can go back and try to repair these relationships. Or maybe I did some things that I wasn't proud of, and I'm trying to kind of rewrite that narrative. And so you just have a lot of deep emotional things, but most men especially don't want to think that they have those problems. And so whenever I get hired, I like to ask people, what did you think you were hiring? And I often will go, well, you're a consultant, you're an advisor. About 6 months to a year in, they'll say, you were a therapist for us. We just didn't think we needed a therapist. And I always am very cautious to say, I'm not a licensed therapist. That's not what I say that I'm doing. But it's helping you be able to unpack some of those emotional weights, and then also redirecting them at times where it's, no, you really need to go see a professional therapist. Mm-hmm. Here's what they can help you with, or here's what you need to do to be able to help you just become a healthy person overall.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so many generational businesses in Oklahoma, right? And there's a lot of ones. I have a friend of mine who has his family has a successful business, and his kids are about to go to college, and they don't want to take over the business, mm-hmm. right? And you look at maybe some of the kids want to come in, or maybe his great granddad, is he living up to the expectations of his great granddad? And there's always, we go through phases, we go through different markets and all the stuff. Like it's never the same as it was really for your granddad as it was now, businesses. And so there's that, like you said, that pressure of the family name, right? And then you come to a point where the kids don't want it, and you're like,
and there's a number of industries that they're not made to transition. The life cycle of the business may only be 20 years, so don't try to force it to be 50. Some businesses need to be a really good 8-year run. They don't need to be an 80-year run. Those days of extreme longevity of businesses seems to be going down every single year, and just some industries, it's already gone. So you might be holding on to a belief that's not actually based in any type of practicality. Different regulations, different things have made that. Gone are the days of having a medical doctor that owns their kind of own independent shop just because of regulatory cost structures. And so certain industries, they've just changed. And you can be mad about that, or you can say, here's the new reality. How do I operate within the realms of the pieces that I can control?
And kind of swallow your pride a little bit, right? Like you said, your title, and you're like, no, the life cycle of this business is ending. Let's get the most for it out of it that we can, and then go do something else. But that must be tough. But also diving back into like your curiosity of people and psychology, this it helps you so much in be a consultant, because you're coming in under the mask of a business consultant. You're not coming in saying, I'm here to change your life personally, and this is why you're in this issue, because mentally you need to do this.
No, and my curiosity often comes from the standpoint of, there's 5 different versions of your life that you could be happy with. Which version do you want, and how can I help make that possible, or reveal data that might change your mind because you're asking for something that's not realistic? And so one of the things that I've realized over time is each person that I interact with has a different version of success, and we assume that people are defining success in the same way that we are. So some people define success based off of wealth accumulation. Can I just make the most money? And if that is your legitimate scorecard, you assume, well, everybody else probably thinks that same way, which is fundamentally not true. But other people might describe their success based off of relationships. If I have good relationships, that's the most important thing for me. So every time that I understand what my scorecard is, how I'm defining success, it can help me better interact with another person, especially in a transition event of dad really wants the business to continue. Daughter really wants to make sure that she has a career that she could be in for 30 years if she wants. It's going to take care of her family. And son-in-law over here might just say, I just want the family to be able to function and there not be any drama, because I grew up in a crazy household and I don't want that to become a thing. And so each person has different things to bring to the table. So part of my role is to help kind of bring those voices out and say, what does success look like? And then what are the different ways that we could get there? And then what is the known pain we would have to go through to make that happen? And what are the potential landmines that we can try to hedge against?
Why did you choose Pepperdine?
I had a fantastic boss, Nathan Meller, whenever I was working for a company called Strata Leadership here, who had done his doctoral work and some other pieces at Pepperdine. We were out there on a client engagement. He took me by campus and said, hey, I think there's this program here that you would do really well in. And so that's how I got to Pepperdine, was listening to the words of a wise mentor in my life, especially during that season. He helped direct me to that. Pepperdine had the #1 program in the world for that. It was a fantastic fit.
Did Tim Ferriss go to Pepperdine?
I'm not sure.
Maybe.
I'm not sure. There's so many spots. And so the program that I was in was an executive master's. So we did courses in Beijing and in Costa Rica and in Lyon, France. And it was this mentality of everything works in a textbook. Let's try it in reality. And so it's a pass-fail structure. It was exactly what I needed. People that really love academia probably would not have enjoyed that structure as much because you didn't have grades. It wasn't kind of that element, but it was the exact thing that I needed for my stage of life and also for my career.
Back to you coming to Oklahoma City at the perfect time. I got here fall of 2011, so pretty close. And I do remember there being cranes up and next to the Devon Tower. I remember hitting golf balls at Lake Hefner and just looking down there being like, what is this giant thing sticking out of the ground in Oklahoma City? And everyone's
basketball is king at that point, like kind of like it is now. It was such a great time to be here and to see the city grow up and have 2 or 3 restaurants that we raved about, and now we have like 30 restaurants that we raved about, maybe more. But yeah, it's super, and obviously the entrepreneur side of you and the childhood that you've had growing up and coming to a city that's just like, there's this itch that like we're here to do something, right? It's such a great place to be. Let's talk a little bit about when Council of Entrepreneurs starts, why it starts, and when does this time up with you transitioning out of working for somebody else to go into working for yourself?
Yeah, so I left Strata Leadership in 2014.
Okay.
Maybe off by a year or so. I started Myriad Insight, which was the first company really on the family business consulting side. About 8 months into that, I realized that it was very hard to find business owners who were 30 that wanted to have conversations beyond just networking events. But every time I found one, they were so appreciative and thankful for that space, because they did not want to have their sales hat on constantly. And so it started off as kind of a curiosity, which is a consistent theme throughout everything I've done. And so this month is 10 years of Council of Entrepreneurs being in existence.
Yeah.
So Oklahoma City, we're about 115 members. We have chapters in Wichita, Tulsa, Nashville. We've got a few other cities, Kansas City, Memphis, Fort Worth, Scottsdale, that are coming online here in the next few months. But really what it's centered around is this idea of entrepreneurs understand the challenges of other entrepreneurs, which is not a unique value prop to COE. Other groups, other things will have similar things to it. But we have created a community and a structure that allows for curiosity to happen amongst those entrepreneurs in a way that is collectively uplifting. And we're not trying to do this from a sales or a tips or a lead perspective. Council of Entrepreneurs is invite only. It's always going to be that way, because we spend more of our time on probably the emotional and psychological challenges that entrepreneurs deal with, as opposed to we're trying to raise X amount of capital, or we're trying to help you get X amount of sales into your business. But it's grown through word of mouth, and it's just been a fun piece to be able to see. And as it's grown today, every project in Oklahoma City has someone from COE connected to it, which has just created a really interesting network, a wide variety of industries. If you can imagine the industry, there's probably somebody in COE that does that. And it doesn't seem to matter how random it is. And it's just fun to be able to, I feel blessed to be able to help kind of curate what that has become, but also watch that continue to grow and develop, and as it's expanding way beyond Oklahoma City.
Yeah, that's really cool to have that impact, and again tie into your mom's side of the family, the teacher side, and to provide value. Did you think that it would get to where it's at today? Was it just kind of like, I'm going to start a friend group or a referral group, whatever you want to call it, and we're going to have this connection and build also friendships and help businesses? Well, I mean, how has it evolved over time, and then how have you visioned it to evolve over time?
Anybody that tells you that they knew what the end would look like is lying. To me, I started with the curiosity, and I just continued to explore the next curiosity and listen to what the challenges and needs were of members, and just explore those curiosities as they come. And so where COE is today, I love what it is. It's probably going to look different in 2 or 3 years, just because that's what it needs. It needs to evolve. It needs to adapt, especially as business and life continues to change.
Yeah. It's awesome. Love it. What's been some of the over the last 10 years, any highlights that stand out, or friendships or people that have come from it that you've come across with?
Oh, all sorts of friendships. I've ended up investing in a number of deals and partners with a number of people who are in COE. One of my favorite things is whenever I introduce 2 people in COE who did not know each other, that then they become friends, they become business partners, they have family vacations together. That's just fun to watch, especially whenever I didn't do anything else beyond making an initial intro and just kind of allowed that dynamic to occur. It's also fun to see business owners that realize I'm operating at one level today because of the challenges that I heard in some of those conversations. I want to kind of level up to this next opportunity, which creates economic opportunity through jobs and other pieces throughout our city and our state, which is just fun to continue to see that growth.
Yeah. So that starts, 2015, you're out, you're doing your Myriad consulting company, Myriad Insight. you have a lot more businesses in the last 10 years that you're in. And you mentioned kind of investing in some people through COE. Let's timeline the last 10 years, how we get to today. What happens in 2015, 2016, and
so
17?
after COE, I was asked to join a software development company here called Clever. So I've been a partner there for 8-9 years or so. That company's been in existence for about 15 years. As that's progressed, I became an owner in a company called Nominee that does fantastic branding work for a number of national brands and some great Oklahoma spots like Jones Assembly. We just did the rebrand for the airport. We do a lot of work for Pabst and Jack Daniels and all sorts of other fun projects. And it's just continued to progress into silent investments into other companies where I don't have an active involvement. But what I found is I have a really good sweet spot of being able to be a value add for a company that's probably 3 to 5 years old. They know what they do well, but they're having an issue with scale. So they know their product, they know their service, but they've hit a little bit of a roadblock on how do we scale this to the next level. So again, that's a systems, that's a process, that might be a sales need. That's where I can add a lot of value. But I also have refined my investment philosophy structure. I will never enter into one of those interactions with the requirement of a liquidity event in the future for me to be able to get my return, because I think that the way you interact with capital drastically changes relationships. I'm not opposed to it, and everything that I have is always for sale for the right price and the right terms, but I don't want to say, I'm putting money in today, I got 3 years, hurry up, we got to get this out. It just changes the dynamic in a way that is not what I want. Other people do that, and it's a great fit for them. That's just not where I'm at in my life and my career.
Looking at, just chatting to you and kind of knowing a little bit about your story, and it makes total sense, obviously, the way that you've grown up and the things that you've done. But the one thing that is in your bio, the one thing you talk about, the one thing that just kind of is all around your story is doing more than you probably thought you could ever do at the same time, right? And taking on all those things. If we put someone in this room and we said, hey, you're going to run 6 businesses and do this, they're like, my head's going to explode. There's no way. And go home to a family.
And whenever each year, my assistant, Evelyn, she does a great job of being able to look at all of my companies and work with all the different stuff. And I think last year I have 14 different companies, 27 different business partners, and it continues to grow each year. But I have to make sure that I know what I can do well, which is I do a really good job of living at 10,000 feet, helping direct and being able to create the clarity and structure for my business partners and our leadership teams at the different businesses for them to be able to operate well. So we're sitting here in Day Club. Day Club's a business that I joined the ownership group of about 2 years ago. It's continued to grow and develop. We have a fantastic team here that leads all the operations. I don't need to do that. And that's not where I would be gifted. If I was trying to do the job they're doing, I would fail miserably. They're substantially better at that than what I am. But I know areas that I can add value and what the lane is that I work well in, and I don't try to deviate out of that. I want to find experts. I want to find people that I know and trust, and that's how I can grow and be a value add to those situations.
How do you go about teaching that to someone in the consulting world? And going into it takes a lot of trust to build a team, and also a lot of these business owners, it's their baby. They only have one business. It's their baby. The best thing for them in their business is to stand away, let someone help it, so they can allocate time to go somewhere else and maybe open a second location or do something else. But they've got that hold of it, right? That's the trust that you have to teach them to build a team and let it do itself. It's not an easy thing to do.
It's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do, but I don't think it's a requirement. So some people need to just own their job, and that is success for them. And so them feeling like, well, until I've hired more people, until I've done this, then I'm constantly missing out. Maybe. What life do you want? If you want to be the person that owns your job, that can be a good economic reality for you, but it comes with other trade-offs. If you own your job, well, you probably can't take time off. If you're sick, revenue might be stopping. You have other different limitations or things on that side. If you want to move into the space where I own a business that has a leadership team, that has other people that are making the business move forward whenever you're not directly involved, that's great. It's a different type of interaction with that entity. And so some people have different skill sets, different abilities. If you want to continue to progress, you have to choose, am I willing to trust people? Am I willing to hire somebody knowing that they are going to do this task 70%, 80% as well as I can. If I can't get over that mental hurdle, it's not a them thing, it's a me thing. And so what is an odd part of my story is I have a number of businesses that I'm involved with today. I have never started a business with a partner.
Okay.
Every business that I have joined has partners in it, but I have never started a business with a partner. One, because I'm not really starting businesses in this time in this season of my life. It's more of I can add value here, but I know what I can do well, and that's what each person needs to recognize is what is the things that you can do well, and also what does your version of success look like? And don't let other people's narratives or expectations make you feel like you're less than simply because, well, you only have a restaurant with one location. Yeah, but do you like it?
Yeah.
Are you happy? Maybe you don't need to have 10.
Yeah.
If you owned a 10 restaurant empire, you probably would be miserable. If that's not what you're motivated by, if that's not how your brain operates, if that's not the financial risk tolerance that you're willing to withstand. So again, all of those pieces are relative.
That's I think it's a huge part of not just business owners, but a huge part of people, sadly, in general. Like, it's this Instagram world that you look at and you think this person's doing this, or they're going on vacation, or whatever they're doing. Mm-hmm. There's always more. And I think it's now more than ever. The way we grew up, we didn't have to see, you always probably had someone in the neighborhood that was like, they're always on vacation, or they drive a nice car. But now you're seeing it 200 times a day if you're on your phone. And mentally, it's just not good for us, right? Like, if I asked you what your dream day is, right, and what, same question, where do you want to be in 30 years? You're like, probably, for me, I'm like living in the country on 20 acres playing golf every day.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to have 20 restaurants to do that, and I think that's part of the consulting side that you do is asking those people their goals and their questions to say, what do you really want to do?
Yeah.
Right? Because it's really not that far away, or it's really not that hard to do.
No, and for most people, it's a journey of rediscovery.
Yeah.
It's things that you used to do that got crowded out because life got busy or because things got hectic. So I spend a lot of time doing puzzles. There's a brand out of Colorado called Liberty Puzzles that I am a aficionado for their wooden laser engraved puzzles. Okay. And I can directly tell you how stressed I am based on how long it's been since I've done a puzzle. Over the last year and a half, Legos have entered the picture a lot more, especially with my 5-year-old who every morning asks me, what Legos are we going to do? And they are expensive.
They're so expensive.
They're getting
now.
so expensive. But puzzles and Legos, I don't do tactile things in my day very often. And so one of the things that I heard a few months ago was people who operate with their brain typically Sabbath with their hands. Okay. And so if you are in a job where you are working cognitively in your head most of the time, you probably find rest or respite by cooking, gardening, building things, because it's just a different plot. Now, if you're in a job where you're constantly building things, that may not be the same fashion for you. But for me, I know that the longer it's been since I've had that time, the more stressed out I likely am, because I can't do a puzzle and multitask on something else. Yeah. If I'm doing a puzzle, I could have a conversation with the other person I'm working with. I can be doing that by myself. The most I can do is probably listen to a podcast.
Yeah.
But I can't be watching a show. I can't be responding to emails. Like, it's just a way for me to be able to help ground myself. Yeah. And especially with that progressing with my daughters, with my wife, when they want to do that with me, it's a fun time to be able to have that kind of shared experience.
There's a guy I found on Instagram who finds out when Lego sets are going out of production. Mm-hmm. He buys them the year that they're going out of production, buys an absolute insane amount of them, holds them for 2 years, and then resells them for double, triple their value.
They are one of the highest asset classes for appreciation.
Isn't that crazy?
Which is, and there's websites that all they do is track the value of different Lego sets. I have a number of unboxed sets at my house, not because I'm trying to wait on them for any reason. I'm going to do them. Yeah. It's just I haven't been able to get to those. One of them is the Titanic set. That is just a massive box that I'm looking forward to doing all 10,000 or so pieces of that.
Do you know Andre Caldwell?
I don't.
Okay, Andre works for Boeing. He's an attorney at Boeing. Was on the podcast. Athlete, super attorney over at Boeing. But his son for Christmas had Titanic and built it, and I didn't realize, like, he was telling me about it on the podcast, and it's like, oh cool, like, you know, we played Lego growing up and we built cars and stuff. It's like 5.5 feet long, maybe 6 feet long, right?
It's 4 or 5 foot long. I mean, it's not something.
It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it might be bigger than your dining room table.
It's a centerpiece.
It's a centerpiece. Yeah. It's not a random spot of, oh, I built it, I'll just put it over here in the corner. It's you might be building your home around this. It feels like it's that large.
He saved up for it for Christmas, and he said it was like $800-900 or something. But I mean, tell me a little bit about parenting and about, excuse me, you know, the things that you have learned growing up, the way that you've grown up. You had 3 kids, usually you said you have, right?
I have a 5-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old daughter.
Yeah, 2 kids. Mm-hmm. With your curiosity, with your psychology, with your love of history, it must be so exciting to watch your kids grow up and be in a place that, you know, I'm going to add value, but I get to do it in a way that's also fun and entertaining. Mm-hmm. And then you have your wife to keep you in check, right? Yeah. To be like, hey, they're kids. Yes. And, you know, like, tell me about parenting and how exciting that's been for you from an entrepreneur's side.
So based upon my childhood, you can guess that my example of what parenting looks like is probably different than most. And that's been an ongoing conversation with my wife and I. Just the way we were raised was very different. Mm-hmm. And anybody that is married has realized that's the case. Your spouse was not raised the same way you were. You have different perspectives. And no child is the same either. As soon as you feel like you got parenting figured out for one, you're going to realize, well, the other one has a different approach. And so a lot of our approach right now is just, I want to give my children the opportunities for them to be curious. And I'm not trying to have them make life decisions at 5, like, let's play, let's expose you to different things, let's travel, let's be able to see some things. I want you to be nice human beings. I want you to be kind to others. I want you to be able to explore your own curiosities. And I want you to be able to just try things. That's the biggest thing for us. Is both of my girls are insane Thunder fans. My 5-year-old, I think, could tell you the name and number of every Thunder player. My 3-year-old can tell you where every popcorn stall is in Paycom, and is thrilled to be able to sit there and watch. But we were at the game whenever Chet got hurt back in November, and Chet is their favorite player. And both of them, for about the next 6 to 8 weeks, just kept asking, when is Chet going to be back? When is Chet going to be back? And then we got to meet Chet at an event 2 or 3 weeks ago, and both of them said, they told Chet, said, we want you to know we've been waiting for you to get better. Like, we're ready for you to be able to play. But I want to be able to give experiences like that to where they can just go and see and be able to try new things.
Yeah. Who were some of your heroes when you grew up?
Oh, I mean, I grew up in West Texas, and I still am a very big Denver Broncos fan.
Okay.
So this was the John Elway, Terrell Davis years. My dad and I, we been to 9 Final Fours, so I went to a lot of college basketball trips. That was a big thing for us, was being able to go on some of those. But most of the time, your heroes are not famous people that other people know. It's the people that mean a lot to you as an individual. So one of the projects I've been working on is a plaque board that's in my office, and it's just for me, but it is names and the impact of certain people that they've had in my life over the course of time. And so there are certain seasons of my life. These 3 or 4 individuals were extremely meaningful. In high school, I had a teacher named Ron Hester, he changed my life. Just his ability to be able to see things in me that I couldn't see at the time, and to be able to help give me opportunity. Like, that was one of those spots that I couldn't have asked for it, but it really changed trajectories. And I've had multiple other professors, mentors, other people like that. And I think it's easier to see them in hindsight as heroes or helpful pieces. But in the moment, I wasn't looking at them saying, well, you're here. It's like, you're my speech teacher. Like, you're just kind of a person that's here. But as you grow up, you realize, no, these people had monumental shifts on who you were as a person.
Yeah. And the great part of it now is, through, Council of Entrepreneurs, or through, just friendships, or just being around Oklahoma City, and now the Council of Entrepreneurs is expanding, you can be that person for so many people, and the things that you've gone through and the experiences that you've had. There's been chaos, there's been extreme success, there's been ups and downs. You've pretty much been through all of it. And, we're pretty uncertain times for a lot of business owners right now, where if they're doing international trade, or if they, there's a lot of things going on daily that are, kind of sometimes ruining people's businesses.
Yeah.
What's it been like for you to come in and be that mentor to someone and be that figure that, you had so many growing up, but the tides have turned and now you're this person during uncertain times that's like, no, let's calm down. This is what we know, and how's that been and what's that like?
Yeah, my learned experience over my entire life has been I deal with chaos very well because I've been in some very chaotic situations. And so whenever the things around us are happening and they're becoming chaotic, that does not cause me to freak out. It's kind of a very pragmatic approach of, okay, well, what do we know? What's the data? What do we need to do today? And so that calming presence can be very helpful, especially in chaotic times for other people, to be able to say, I hear the concern. Let's unpack what pieces of this are you actually frustrated or concerned about, and let's try to be able to bring the emotion to a healthy level. I'm not trying to remove emotion, but can we get to a spot to where we can use that in a thoughtful conversation or analytical approach instead of being led by emotions that might be in a hysterical or kind of unhelpful manner.
Yeah. People like you are very valuable, right? Because when the house is burning, the fire's going, you're thinking, running, you're thinking, what am I going to run into the house and grab? And you're like,
I mean, if we were sitting here in the interview right now and say a camel walked through this room, I don't think it would surprise me. Because I've been in so many scenarios and so many situations where it's like, oh, well, there's a camel. Let's figure out what we need to do from that. And so my wife has joked for years that my emotions just kind of stay pretty flatline. Yeah. So let's say the Denver Broncos win the Super Bowl, the Thunder win the NBA Finals, some major event happens, my emotions just kind of stay right here. They don't really go high. They don't really go low. Yeah. They stay within a fairly tight band, which is not always helpful whenever I need to be expressive. Right. Or I need to be able to show those emotions. But it can be very helpful, especially at times.
Yeah. When you're courtside and Shea's dropping threes, and you're like, I should be happy right now. And
see, when we win the playoffs, I can cheer, and I can be very happy. But I'm not going to be the spot to where it's the Thunder lost. My next 3 days are ruined because I can't operate kind of the way that I want.
Finishing up, a few fun questions for you. If you were to start from absolutely zero today, what are the businesses you'd go into, and how would you do it?
I don't know if there's a specific business. It'd be more of who do I want to work with. Okay. I think it'd be more of who am I learning from, who do I want to be around, and the industry's kind of irrelevant. I think today you're going into a world where there's much more focus on experiences. People are willing to pay for experiences. Highly curated experiences are very valuable. That's one thing I'm seeing with Nominee on the branding front, is we're going much more into the physical interaction of how people are interacting with brands. And I would probably step into something more along those lines of like, how does the way in which we interact with people in physical spaces create opportunities for us?
Yeah. You mentioned you love museums and history. Any favorite museums over your time, or exhibits you've seen that in certain museums that you want to go see again?
The list is very very long. British Museum is a fantastic. Absolutely love that one. The World War II Museum in New Orleans is exceptionally well done. Just one of the top ones. There's a new museum that's opened in Cairo. But last time I was in Cairo, all the museums at that time were basically just like warehouses. Nothing was really labeled. They've now built a fantastic new museum in Cairo that I really want to go to. The Parthenon Museum in Athens that they just finished a few years ago. We were there a handful of years ago. That was fantastic, especially having lived in Athens for a while before that was done and seeing what they were able to create there. Just so many different ones depending upon kind of the nuance.
With your love of history and your love of museums and all of this alien stuff that's coming out, I'm a big fan of Graham Hancock and his show and the things that he's doing. Do you subscribe to any of those? Do you have any of your own ideas and thoughts, especially when you talk about being in Athens and ancient history and all of the things that people don't do the research to know that this stuff actually happens? There's things that happened, and especially when you talk about Graham Hancock and he talks about the Younger Dryas and all of that space stuff. Is there anything that you subscribe to or anything that piques your interest there that's just personal to you, that takes you out of your business head, that's just like, you know what, I think this might be true?
Not really. One of the things that's always been really a struggle for me is I have a very hard time reading fiction or reading anything that's kind of in the sci-fi-esque realm. Okay. I think my brain is so kind of logical and pragmatic that I see it, I'm like, yeah, that might exist, might be there. It feels so disconnected, and so it's not an area that I've had a whole lot of curiosity. Now, some of my business partners, especially Matt Williamson at Clever, if he was here, we could have hours-long conversations around that. But yeah.
Okay, good to know. I have to have Matt on the podcast. We can dive into all that stuff. Yeah. Last question. My day job's real estate in the luxury real estate space, and so I get to help people find their dream homes and ask people what their dream home is. So my question to you is, as of right now today, because it'll probably change tomorrow, without, this is your dream house, not your wife's, not your kids, no budget, no money constraints. If you were to build your dream home today, what are the non-negotiables that be at your dream home?
Well, we built ours about 3 years ago. We're just north of Lake Arcadia on 2 acres, the 20-minute drive to downtown. We got space for gardens and pools and all sorts of stuff, and plenty of space for our kids to be able to be kids. And we lucked out finding a really good new kind of development open space about 5-6 years ago. Took a little bit of time to get that drawn up. But one of the things for me is I wanted to have an office that I was able to do what I need to do, which included multiple workstations to where I can have stuff where I'm sitting down or I'm standing up or I've got the screens that I need. My big thing is just being able to have access to light. The one thing that I wish we were in, I wish we had European mass transit options to where I wasn't so car dependent upon that. That would be the biggest thing that I would change, just the ability to be able to get somewhere without needing to get in a car to be able to move where I want to go.
Okay. Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for having us. I know we didn't talk too much about TEDx, but you had a huge involvement in bringing TEDx Oklahoma City to town 2 or 3 times?
Yeah, we did three rounds of TEDx Oklahoma City,
which was brilliant.
It was fun. And Ken Stoner was the originator of TEDx Oklahoma City back in 2012, 2013. One of the first things I attended. Yeah. And then it went on hiatus for about 6-7 years. I actually just ran into Ken 2 days ago. And we were kind of reminiscing about that. But TEDx Oklahoma City was a fantastic thing for our city. Really glad to be a part of it. Really glad to be able to help bring amazing people like yourself onto the stage with good stories to share.
Me, Les Thomas, Tito. The class that we had was incredible, and I know I'm missing some names, but Amy was great, and Amy and David were great in coaching me because I'd not done anything like that. But I really appreciate that. For people listening, I'll put the links to your bio and counsel, not counsel entrepreneurs, but everything you do in the description. People go check that out. But I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much, and I look forward to building our friendship over the next 30 years. It's going to be exciting, and Oklahoma City's growing too.
That sounds great. Thank you very much, Mike.
For people listening, we will catch you next episode. Cheers.
Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at OklahomaHOF. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my 2 pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my 2 golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC. And hopefully our pups will run into each other. Turn your dream home into a reality with Home Creations, a family-owned and operated builder with over 40 years of trusted experience right here in Oklahoma. Call Holly at 405-364-9999 to schedule a showing or visit our website for more details. Home Creations, building homes, shaping futures, strengthening communities.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.